What's the weather like in Australia?
Oh, it's brisk this morning. It's pretty chilly.
Are you in Melbourne or Sydney? I forgot.
I'm in Sydney.
Sydney.
Yeah. This morning was 7 degrees, which is pretty cold. One of the first very cold days. Cold, as in cold for Sydney. But it was brisky. But now I'm all warmed up. it's the adrenaline.
All right, guys. Welcome to the third Nirovision Works with the Next webinar. We're going to allow people to jump on for the next few minutes. While we wait, I see some names I recognize and some I don't. So Ryan Fechner from Network Optix, I see you.
Hi, Ryan.
Matt Harrison, I see you too.
Oh, my buddy Matt.
Yeah, I've got a few more people. So we've had about 120 registrations. Let's see how many will actually join us. For those of you who don't know us, I'm Tony Luce from Network Optix, and this is Eliana Betio from Nirovision.
That's right.
We were discussing our family history earlier, so that's why we're kind of laughing.
Because we like each other, right?
Excellent people. All right. Let's see, we're up to about 20 people. We'll give them another minute.
One more minute.
One more minute.
Coffee ready.
It is like I'm in Texas right now. It is hot. In Texas, we say 90 degrees, and most other places around the world, you say 30.
True. Yeah.
But it's not very hot for Texas.
30 is not very hot.
Not very hot for Texas. Texas gets up to like 44, 45. I think when I was young, when we had real bad weather when we were playing football. Let's see. 131.
Oh, we have photographic evidence.
It got up to 55 when we were playing. Yeah, that's pretty bad.
That's bad.
That's
dehydration, but
a lot of people passing out on the football field. So.
Yeah, you bet. Not anywhere close to those 30 degrees here. 7 degrees and counting.
It's winter there, though.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're almost at 20 participants. 22.
Okay.
We just did 20. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to talk about something. This is the third one we're done with Nirovision. The first one we showed a while back. The second one we showed the new widgets, the web widgets that have been added that make it really cool to be able to look at the data that's coming from Nirovision inside of Network Optix and powered by NX products and NX Witness. Today we're going to go into something that's very relevant right now, which is COVID-19 and contact tracing. And basically, the second one we also looked at temperature monitoring that you guys had done to establish like a baseline and to recognize when there are abnormal temperature patterns. And today we're going to do the same thing, but it's been enhanced a bit, right? So Eliana walk us through the new updates. And here's a solution that you guys will be able to give to your customers who are looking for a COVID-19 solution. Like always, if you have questions, please throw them in the Q&A. Alan from Whisper Technology says hi, Eliana.
Oh, hi, Alan. Yes.
So throw your questions in. Feel free to chat. And I'll be paying attention to the questions and answers. And Eliana usually does too, and usually answers them before I can answer them. Or ask the question, but I'll try and ask the question.
Yeah, give me a hint, Tony, today because I'm on my own. So if you see something that's worth stopping, definitely stop me.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Tony. It's always a pleasure to talk to you before and during the webinar. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone that's joining us. As Tony mentioned, I'm here to talk to you about Nirovision, but because we've done a few webinars in the past, the last one in April, I don't want to focus too much on features because we've seen most of them. Instead, what we prepared is 3 different verticals who have approached us during these troublesome times to get a solution implemented in their places. I brought up some of the questions that we got asked from them and some of the pain points that we hear from them. And I'm explaining also what you could do in Nirovision to try to accommodate these type of use cases, and also the participation of NX among all that. And then at the very last part, we'll discuss the new version of the plugin and Q&As all over the place. So feel free to shoot our questions. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Eliana. I've been working in Nirovision for 2 years now, and my face is all over the marketing materials. So if you don't know me, you've probably seen my face before. Nirovision is an Australian company. We have the headquarters in Sydney. That's why it's very early morning for me. We developed Nirovision internally, so it's using proprietary algorithms that we designed and developed ourselves. We are a team of 20 people here, mostly engineers spanning across machine learning, mobile, and distributed systems. So that's why we can innovate quite quickly and try and catch up with what's happening around us. And that's what we did when COVID started becoming a problem earlier in March. But we started off this road with the goal of using deep learning to accurately identify people from security cameras. So in a nutshell, and in an approach that's similar to NX, there's so much video being recorded that's thrown up to waste that could generate not only real-time actions, but also insights that could determine business decisions, and in these opportunities also help save some lives. So using that video and processing that video efficiently is something we wanted to do. So we started off developing facial recognition technology, but Nirovision evolved into becoming what we call an identity platform. And what we mean by that is usually facial recognition is either one of the many components or many analytic components vendors sell you on, or it's a standalone solution that has to be combined with other systems. So in this case, we wanted to manage identities, not only faces and recognition results. And identities in Nirovision then are entities that could have not only relationships to other groups that we use labels for, like the staff label that's in the picture, but also this metadata could be information you need to store about an individual, external IDs, preferences, behaviors, notes, and so forth. So with that in mind, you're going to see that some of the use cases are going to bring up this metadata question into place, because businesses not only have to follow individuals around, they have to record information about them. And as part of the platform as well, we think about integrations, and that's why working closely with the NX team, we keep evolving the plugin. We are very active in the support community, and thanks for everyone who has given us a hand pushing through for some features as well. And that's how we managed to give back to the NX community more features too, which I'm going to show as we move forward. But the main topic that we're going to discuss today is COVID, and of course, things that businesses can do to try to prepare themselves for reopening if you're not in that stage yet. What we're seeing, at least here in Australia, a little bit in the future compared to other countries, is that businesses have a duty of care to their employees and their staff, and to their customers, of course, and to the general population. I mean, we're all in this together. So tools that could help make everyone feel safe about being around each other and trying to come back to business as normal are very welcomed. And that's why we released this integration to thermal cameras. So we work with a handful of models yet. And the way this works is we consume that metadata that the camera gives us, and that means a temperature measured on an individual. And we push that metadata through our facial recognition pipeline to associate that read with individuals. So by doing that, we can trigger a real-time alert if an absolute temperature is reached. So typical procedure we're seeing in some businesses around, you determine that the alerting temperature for you is, for example, 37.5. If you're guided by the guidance here in Australia, could be 37.3, for example. You set up a value, trigger a real-time alert. But the beauty of combining that information with a facial recognition pipeline is I know about the individual, and I can measure that individual, especially if it's someone that repeatedly comes through a venue, across multiple times of the day and across multiple days. So I could approximate what that baseline temperature for that individual is by virtue of seeing that person repeatedly. And measuring a deviation against someone's baseline temperature is the appropriate way of measuring what is described as fever. So
How long does it take to establish a baseline?
So it's depending on the number of reads that you get, it takes a few days. We will measure you in different times of the day. So we're gonna get reads from you in the early morning, reads for you at midday, and reads for you in the evening. And once they are combined, then we push that baseline into the individual identity, and you can trigger then the alarm for known people based on baseline, and for unknown people, you could trigger it based on the absolute threshold too. So
is there a minimum number of cameras you need in order to be able to do that, or just one camera is fine?
Just one is fine. What you need to do is see the individual repeatedly. That's pretty much the premise.
Like when you say repeatedly, do you have like a number associated with that? Like, or
no, not a precise number because it's in a very complex calculation. But let's say, at least a few days.
A few days.
Yes.
A few days, and assuming you walk by the camera 4 or 5 times a day.
Correct. Yeah, roughly, exactly what you would do in a normal traffic situation.
So arriving, going to lunch, coming back from lunch, leaving, going to get coffee, coming back, basically.
Basically, yeah, that's absolutely right. So, or you could use the general threshold as well, and backtrace that information because it's going to be stored against your footage. And of course, if you have an X in the picture, it's going to be stored against the objects and the recognition and the custom events as well. So if you need to look back, you can look back at that trace record. So one of the first things that I want to talk about is HK facilities. Of course.
Hey, Anna, before you get into it, I just one more question.
Sure.
On the last screen, you showed a deviation, and there's arrows next to the deviation temperature.
Yes. There's what, sir?
It looks like there's little arrows up and down.
Oh, yes, arrows.
So can you adjust the deviation you're looking for?
Yes, exactly. That's actually something you said yourself, Tony. So you tell me how much of a deviation you allow on the individual. There is not necessarily an agreement in the community as to what that deviation should be. That's why it's a customizable value.
Is there a low threshold and a high threshold for that, or?
Interesting. I mean, we've had in implementation 0.7 degrees of a deviation. 1 degree I've seen too. It's again, there's no recipe for it, so you could set that value to be anything that suits the use case.
All right. Perfect.
So no, of course. Hey, HK facilities are one of the industries that, of course, have been more badly hit about this situation. One of the things that we've been discussing as they approach us is they are having trouble because they have to not only monitor visitors as they come to the venue, but they also have to measure their temperature, confirm their immunization records, and of course, if there is a read that's above normal, whether that's using one method or the other, it's irrelevant at this point. But when there's an abnormal read, there are procedures that need to be followed that involve, of course, reporting it to the government, but also notifying the resident's family, everyone that's been in contact with that person, and so forth. So HK facilities don't necessarily have the bandwidth to accommodate this using their current staff. And they need a simpler way to not only collect temperature reads about the individual, trying to expose as little stuff as possible, but also an easy and simple way to fill those answers and store that information somewhere that it's handy in case they need to go back to it. So one of the things that have resonated with them when we discuss Nirovision as a potential solution is the ability to store this type of information using custom metadata fields. And the way that looks is, depending on the requirements, and I'm vague on purpose because legislation varies greatly across, worldwide. So please take my words and adjust them based on the legislation that you're living around. But in this case, and at least in Australia, you have to store that information for 28 days, and you have to store the date where you ask those questions, and you have to store an immunization record file. So the way we're solving this with Nirovision is we're either filling the custom metadata fields manually by a receptionist when the temperature is measured to trigger the real-time alert if something is off. But then also some customers are using our APIs to store a form in their current system if they have such a thing, or their CRM, and pushing those results toward Nirovision to store the date where that record was created. So then when the next time the visitor comes up, it's easy for you to tell if they've been measured or not, and if they are up to date or not.
So basically, depending on so this is considered kind of a medical record in these facilities, right?
Yes.
So you need to be like HIPAA compliant in like North America, for example. Or like, but that compliance really depends on what they do with the information, I think is what you said earlier, right?
That's right. Yeah. So in some cases, like you say, depending on the nature of what this information is classified as, you may be able to store it in a way or another. You may be required to remove it after a certain number of days. It's hard to be precise again, but you get the spirit of it.
It's customizable to be flexible enough to allow you to accommodate your own local regulations. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah. Spoken like a true marketer, Tony. So the other thing that HK facilities in general have been reaching out for is, in AVO is an acronym that's used in Australia, but what that means is violence orders that involve the police when it comes to domestic violence or any sort of family-related violence. So this is in the same spirit where a gaming venue would look for blacklist or ban people or self-exclusion in the cases where that exists. So they need a way to enforce when there's so much staff rotation and staff is taking care of their residents, they can't be monitoring who's in and who's out at all times. So setting up an alarm to be triggered in a way to alert local staff and security about someone with any of these type of restraining orders is very welcomed. But at the same time, what you're seeing on the screen is one of our new features. So when we released the body temperature solution, our first customers were very quick to point out that they wanted a way to give feedback about the results to their employees and staff as they were being measured. And also a way for them to instruct them what to do in the case of an unusual read. So, and I understand that this has different meanings depending on the type of venue and the privacy concerns that venues may have. HK facilities are very privacy concerned. Of course, it's people's homes. So you could have a display like the one that we're about to release. And in this display gives you real-time feedback about recognition results, but it has its own privacy controls. So you don't have to show people's faces or names or even the temperature read itself. You can confirm or inform the person that they need to be processed through a secondary check using this display. That doesn't take away or require a user to be logged in the app. It's just sitting there and it's giving you feedback, and it has a customizable layout as well. So if you want to display more information, you can, but you also can just leave it sitting there. We can put instructions in there. So for example, informing people that there's sanitizing soap or hand sanitizer available, and any sort of messaging as well. So this type of displays could be used in multiple ways, but in this particular case, it could be an easy way to give feedback as people come into the venue.
Eliana, you said the display, is it a physical device or is it like a web-based UI?
It's based on iOS, so it's an iOS app, and it's embedded into our iOS app for the time being, but we want to release it in a cloud version so you could run it outside of the iOS platform. Yeah. So for a first pass, it's iOS.
If you did that and you put it in the web-based interface, then powered by any product, the desktop client can be put into remote monitor mode, and you could push that as a layout for customers so that it would just show them what was going on based off of the information coming in, right?
That's exactly what we're planning on doing. Yeah. So for the first pass, yeah, you see this, and that's why we've pointed out in an iOS mode, but soon you'll be able to do that too.
So one thing about the aged care facilities, though, just to make sure everybody online understands the magnitude of the problem with COVID. In the United States, something like 42% of the deaths so far have been in nursing homes. So it's a huge issue for those facilities. So if you do work with someone in those facilities, they're probably looking for something like this. So
yeah.
Good time to knock on their door and let them know you have something that can resolve that problem, or at least help them to mitigate the problem.
True. And then also coming back to the hardware itself, this is not necessarily on the cheap side. So trying to magnify the impact of an investment of this sort by just adding some bits of smarts can make a whole difference. And think also that most of these venues don't necessarily have an IT team on site or an IT reference that they can reach out to for this type of work. So they are in need also of advice. I mean, some venues do, truthfully, but most don't. So approach them to have a chat, because they may not even be aware that this type of technology is available. So the last problem, which becomes a bit exacerbated when you factor in the possibility of an infection, are wanderers. Dementia patients are something that aged care facilities have to deal with very all the time. So statistics around wandering patients are as scary as the ones you just blurted out, Tony. It's something that if you don't find the person within the first 24 hours, the chances of survival are minimum. And if you factor in the possibility of that person not only wandering, but also spreading around the virus itself, it becomes an even more complex problem to solve. So in combining the possibility of receiving real-time alerts, and those real-time alerts being from an SMS to the authorized nurse responsible for the patient, to a push notification to the nurse station, a message to the security guard at the entrance. It could be as complex or as simple as you want it to be, but that real-time messaging could be the difference between catching that person or not.
I had one question for this. Can you do the opposite? Meaning, can you send an alert if someone hasn't been seen for a while?
We've been asked that question before. We can't do that yet, but that is a very interesting problem to solve. And coming back to the ML team on site, it's something that we've been thinking about. We don't have a solution for it yet. But in the same spirit, also, the other thing that we're thinking of too, Tony, is combining this with an access control scenario. You could, if you see an individual like this, a resident, you could lock the door, for example.
True.
If you see them approaching a door, so we could accommodate a similar type of approach by combining an access control scenario, and I mean, NX is great at that as well. So
the only scary part about that is if there's a fire.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So you gotta have proper egress points, but a lot of these facilities, you just have to have proper push bar exit and fire exits. So.
Yeah. And then lastly, the ability to look back at someone's activity chronologically, which you can do in NX if you have the integration enabled, or you can do that within Nirovision too, is something that venues are using to try to draw back the movements of someone and identify not only possible people that have been in contact, which you could do with our nearby feature, but also identify possible surfaces or areas of the facility that need to be sanitized afterwards. So in any case, ultimately, what all this means is points of attention that a software like ours and a system running in your premises could do for you, way of alerting you or addressing a situation that needs immediate attention, or evidence that you can look back to fulfill your legislation and be compliant, but also to provide better service for your residents and your customers as well. In terms of aged care, that's pretty much what we've been hearing so far. Before I jump to the next use case, Tony, is there anything you see there, any questions that we should address?
I don't see any questions. I was just going to ask, does anybody have any questions about the applicability of it in aged care facilities? I don't think so. Okay.
If you're thinking through, shoot it down, but we'll move to the next use case then. Next use case is manufacturing and logistics. We call this essential services because that's worldwide the terminology that's been used for those enterprises that remain open even in these troublesome times. So these type of companies are either providing an essential service themselves or aiding to provide an essential service themselves, and they had to remain open despite the circumstances. So the main thing that, and this is the use case that triggered our approach for baseline temperatures as well. So the main use case in this case is, as opposed to aged care facilities, which focus a little on residents, but mostly on visitors to prevent an infection coming from outside. In this case, we're talking about repeated traffic of the same groups of people over and over again, because this is a workplace. This is a place that hasn't been affected by the reductions of workers and work hours. So by virtue of seeing the same stuff over and over again, and you see in the graph here that we're measuring, and this is the visualization that represents your baseline, every hour we collect temperatures to reference that baseline for you and use it to construct it. So in these scenarios where we get the luxury of seeing the same person in a repeated times, we can measure that person more accurately and avoid the need to use a general threshold to catch them. And in the same fashion as with the absolute threshold, you can trigger real-time alerts, which could be as simple or as complex as you'd like. And you still have that also that reference stored in individual profiles to look back to if you need to. And you see here the difference between the temperature of the individual that wouldn't have been triggered if we had set the threshold to 37.5, but it would if we had the baseline for him. So aside from the repeated traffic, the display kiosk also played a part in this, this display solution plays a part in these customers as well, because the problem here is in these massive factories, there are shift changes, and usually shift changes are very busy. If you have a pathway to guide your employees down through in order for them to be measured according to the guidance of how thermal cameras work, then if your process isn't streamlined, then you're going to get an incredibly long queue, people that don't know what to do, confusion, and confusion leads to uncertainty. So having a way of displaying that that person's temperature has been measured, everything is okay, or no, not everything is okay, there's something that needs to be done, is why we developed this display. This display also has its own sound notifications too, which is something I didn't mention in the previous slide. So if you had this sitting down in a noisy reception area, you could use that sound cue to know that something is off. But then because of the type of processes that companies endure, there's usually a secondary check ready to work on the employee that needs to go through that revision. So not much to say around, yeah?
That picture is appropriate. He looks like he's not happy that he's been asked to wait for 5 minutes in first aid.
He's probably early in the morning, he's getting to the office, and that's the least.
It's a proper picture for that. So
yeah.
for this though, I mean, those instructions are customizable, right?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Like part of the iOS app.
Exactly. Yep. And when it's cloud, you're gonna get the same type of customization as well. So the difference between this view and the previous one is the previous one included the name. You could do without the label as well, and you could do even without the face. You could just leave the sign. So or you can jump to the other side of the spectrum and actually display face, size, and label. It could be as informative or as private as you would like it to be.
It's the same. It's the same app as the
exactly. It's the same app. Exactly.
So Edwell asked a question that I think maybe is a good time to answer in advance. But yeah. Basically, the licensing fees for all these solutions are based off of the face, not the like. Are they standard? Like all these features come with Nirovision, or are they individually licensed?
Yeah, no, they all come with Nirovision, Tony. So our licensing model is still based on number of cameras connected to the system, and also based on the size of your identity database.
Yep. So you have a singular licensing model, and these
correct.
Features, these new features that you guys are introducing, are part of that.
Exactly.
Right?
So subscription-based type of systems like ours. We release these type of features constantly, because that's the benefit of being signed up to something like this. You get new features all the time, and I mean, as fast as we can churn them actually. So these type of features, and I don't foresee any of them including any cost anytime soon, because of how the subscription model is intended to work. So the only thing that you have to be mindful at this point is the number of cameras that are connected to, and the size of the database, and that's pretty much it. One more thing about essential services too is we were talking about contact tracing before, And in essential services, but mostly across all verticals, the ability to identify people who have been seen in frame together could help trace back someone's movements and speed up the identification of people who have possibly come into contact with someone that is sick. And also you can use custom metadata to store contact details if you want them to. Again, depending on what's allowed and what's instructed by in your country of residence. So in terms of the essential services, I've shown you pretty much the first three questions that we get, which is it easy to measure someone's temperature without disrupting everyday life as little as possible? Can we help with contact tracing and any sort of evidence provisioning, and also a quick and easy way to instruct people of what the next step is? But we've also been asked about knowing where people have been because of the surfaces they've been in contact with. And we know that venues, as they reopen, are going to enhance their cleaning processes, of course, following guidelines from international governments and local governments as well. But it's helpful to have a system that could let you know where people have been. So because we store the camera that recorded the images in Nirovision and we pass that metadata to NX as well, you could use our historical traceback of someone's activity, whether by just creating a rule and reading through the custom events, or just using the notifications panel input field by searching for a label or an identity. You could easily see back all the places where someone has been. And I know this is something that you guys in NX know that by heart, and that's why I just added a clip to the video of my the last recording that I did from NX, where I do that. But it's pretty much entering, and I'll play what we talked about. But it's using the notifications panel, search for a label if you have such a label created, and passing that metadata to NX, and then you can play back for as long as you like. So even if this is still quite a manual process in itself, at least having the evidence noted with the timestamps, and if you're looking at this in Nirovision, you could export it to a CSV, you can throw it into a BI tool, or you can push it using the APIs. We've given you pretty much all the tools that we have for you to consume this information.
There's another way to look at like specific surfaces, guys, that would be really fast and allow you to kind of zoom in to activity, which is just the smart motion search that we have, smart motion search. So you could highlight just the part of the table, and then you could look at like when people have been on that table, and then you could pull up their associated metadata, right? So one question was, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways, which is from Richard. Is there a dwell timer for this function? Like,
what does that mean, Tony? Sorry.
What that means is if I don't care if you touch the table for 1 second, but I want to know if you leaned on it for 10.
Yeah, I understand. No, definitely. That's not something we can do.
That's a pretty complex, even for AI, that's a complex function, Richard. So it's, I mean, you're talking a year or two and you'll probably have that function, right? But right now, it's a matter of training the neural networking to be able to recognize that someone's touching this thing and that they're sitting on it for a certain period of time, right?
Yeah, I understand the request, obviously, because that would determine whether a surface is compromised or not. But yeah, definitely not something that is as straightforward as it sounds.
It's a good question. So you should put it.
Absolutely.
You should email a feature request to Nirovision.
It's true, actually.
They're gonna explain it to the developers. So.
Or we can bring Richard. We can do it together. So aside from this, Tony, and I'm separating offices and essential services, but ultimately I still mean venues that have repeated traffic and predictable in terms of times of the day, but mostly the fact that the same people are all over again. So offices that have reached out to us for a thermal solution have found themselves with the need to know who's been around at all times. And I'm mentioning this in this context, but truthfully, this is something that our customers have asked us before too. So you have a facial recognition system that's constantly monitoring people in and out. It's pretty simple for us to tell you how many people we've seen so far in a period of time. We just have to display that in a way for you to consume it easily. But then by doing so, you could understand your ins and outs of the traffic in your venue. You could, if you classify your traffic by adding different labels to your staff, your visitors, and your contractors, you could easily identify who's in and who's out most of the times. But mostly, this feature particularly comes into play when capacity limits are starting to be enforced worldwide. So we're looking into people counting to complement this type of solution. But for the time being, because facial recognition is already doing a version of people counting itself, we can display who we've seen lately, or right now actually it's 24 hours, but it could be another period of time. And we want to display it in a version of a dashboard so you can easily tell who's been in and who's in at this time. This is something also that came into play recently when in Australia, at least, there were new rules for evacuating buildings. And when you have an office that's a couple floors long, it's very hard for you to know how many people are in. So just a quick glance of information like this could help in these scenarios. But then the other big problem that the other big pain point we hear from offices is they want to be up and running with a thermal camera and start addressing these concerns right now, but they have 1,000 employees, and creating 1,000 identities in the system manually one by one would be pretty cumbersome. So to speed that up, we released an import tool, and that import tool can manage up to 1,000 images at once. But not only that, what we do when you import your faces, if you already have some pre-existing identities in the system, we run recognition on those faces to try to identify possible duplicates at that stage. And we allow you to label them and add metadata to them as well. So by just throwing these images into the import tool, you select the labels you want to add. We run recognition to prevent duplicates, and in a few minutes, you're off with your database up and running. There are other ways to create identities in Nirovision. You can use your camera's images, you can use uploaded photos at the individual level, or you can just grab your phone and take a photo with it. But this tool could give you or could get you up and running within minutes. In this case, we are showing you recognition results. We're also showing you close matches. So close matches is one of our most recent features where we relax the recognition thresholds to display a close alternative using your existing database. So hoping that these little tweaks and quirks can prevent you creating duplicates to begin with, but also help you be up and running in minutes.
So on the previous slide, I had a question.
Right.
So for the occupancy count, can you define like zones there?
Not in Nirovision, but you could in the camera if you wanted to obscure an area. We take a copy of the RTSP stream.
Well,
so
what I mean, sorry, I'm not talking about like the like masking, which is what I think you're talking about. What I'm talking about is like if I've got a big facility and I've got 4 cameras that look at, you know, let's say the production area, or let's say the marketing team.
Yeah.
And then I have 4 cameras that look at like the finance and the accounting teams, right?
Yeah.
I have 4 cameras that look at like the dining area.
Yes.
And I have 4 cameras that look at like the meeting room, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to set a rule that says, hey, if there are more than this number of people in that area, give me an alert.
Oh, in feature request number 2 of the webinar, no, not like that. You could filter by camera. So you could display this focusing on the camera that's pointing at finance, for example, so but we couldn't alert you on that. Yeah.
So if you wanted to do that right now, what you need to do is get a wide camera can you guys don't do fisheye lenses, right?
Fisheyes, yeah, I mean, okay. If you are in the middle of the fisheye, it's okay. But then as soon as you get to the corners, the distortion of the face is very hard to deal with.
So really, if you wanted to use a feature, or if you wanted to set up a facility to look at like the number of people in a specific view, then you would really need to do it by having a camera that has a good view of that area.
Yeah,
right. Like a high res,
the right thing.
Like a super high res camera that has good pixel density across the entire view that you want to track the number of people in. So there's more cameras. There's a way to do it, but you guys don't do it right now with like camera groups or anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. But again,
Email that feature request to you after.
Sounds good. People counting is also something that has come up quite recently. We don't, even though this is our approach, it's not literally people counting in the usual sense of the word. So we're investigating it.
More like
We'll probably,
right? So it's more like traffic analysis.
Yes, exactly. Than it is counting per se. Yeah. So in terms of that, we're investigating it. So we may have a solution on around more precisely people counting itself, but not as of it yet. Not even to a point where I can even spoil it for you. So
yeah.
When it comes then, well, we discussed the import tool. So aside from this, this is something that Tony asked me before, but Nirovision has mobile applications, so you can use your iOS or Android devices. The display, again, it's iOS only for now, but it'll soon be available on the cloud, so you would be able to use something beyond the iOS architectures. But we also have a desktop app that's accessible via the web. These applications could be accessed from any device, and you have the functionality of Nirovision. Some features are available across platforms, while others are exclusive to one of the platforms just by virtue of the real estate screen that we get on desktop. So is it a good time to jump to NX? I think it is. Version 1.6 of the plugin, funny how time flies. It's incredible. We've been working very hard at it. Again, thanks to the community and to the incredible technical team in NX who bears with us and helps us develop our plugin alongside them develop the metadata SDK. So the latest improvements in the plugin is we now have installers for Ubuntu and Windows too. So we had Windows before. The installer is convenient because you avoid having to install dependencies manually. And it also configures quite a big portion of the plugin itself, achieving those very impressive 1.30 minute time setup. And then the other thing that we've been working hard to is to try to support as many Powered by NX products as possible. So of course we started down the road with NX Meta and with NX Windows, with NX Witness, but we want to be able to accommodate the entire ecosystem of NX because
let me clarify that. So you already are supported by all Powered by NX products. So anything that is done via the metadata SDK, as long as the version is 4.0 or higher. So there are, I'm not going to go through the Powered by NX products, but different markets, there are different Powered by NX products. NX Witness VMS is a Powered by NX product in your market, in the Oceania market. And there's some other ones as well, so once you want one of the powers of one of the powerful things about working with NX, if you're a developer out there and you're looking at and you're watching this webinar, is if you develop an integration, whether you use the server API, which is the REST API, or you use the metadata SDK, which right now is C++, then it doesn't matter which developer tool you use. If you've done the development once, then it works with your product will now integrate with all Powered by NX products. So there's no extra hoops to jump through or anything like that. It's one of the benefits of doing an integration with us is that you get access to all of our ecosystem partners and all the downstream products that are based off of NX Meta, which is the development platform that we use to create Powered by NX products. So
thank you for clarifying. Absolutely, Tony. And that's what we make a good team. So in terms of the support, we are asking for, Nirovision runs on version 4.0, truthfully, but if you want to use the browser embedded widgets, you need to be running 4.0.
4.1. So 4.1 is available right now. If you haven't downloaded it and tried it yet, guys, you can go to my.networkgraphics.com and there's a beta version available. If you're part of the Meta Developer Program, you can also download it from the Meta Cloud, and so you can get it there. There's one of the features, and we're not really talking about version 4.1 features very much, just because we wait until it's released. And right now, it's going to be in the next 30 days or so. So version 4.1 if you download the beta and you try it, one thing that you will notice is that the browser is now a native Chromium version, updated Chromium version of the browser.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it's for lack of a better word, it's hella faster. So it's way faster.
Absolutely.
It supports a lot more different types of web technologies. So you could open up YouTube and watch videos if you want to, or you could bring in CNN or like whatever news report you want live next to your video that you're watching. You can open up Google Apps and log in once, and you'll be logged into all your Google apps. So you can open up Drive and Gmail and all the different subsequent apps. Same thing for like Office 365 and everything. You have a lot more operability in the browser, and that's why Eliana's got here. She recommends using version 4.1 is because all these cool features she's showing you in terms of the widgets that Nirovision has developed can be brought right in, and then they look native to the platform. So you can have your live video right next to your people counting or your temperature sensor, right? So
yeah, you should definitely try it out if you haven't before, because it's quick. So I'm happy to show you that. And now I'm gonna close it because my computer is complaining, and I'm gonna go back to the slides. Oh, Tony, can you hear me still?
Yeah, you cut out for a second, but you're back. Oh, did we lose Eliana? All right, guys. So for you guys who are out there, can you do me a favor? Since Eliana disappeared, let's just make sure everybody else is still on. So if you're still on, can you do me a favor and just put something in the chat? Thanks, Ryan. All right, so it's Eliana's problem. Ping, Richard, I'm here. All right, guys, so we're cool. Eliana's got to make her way back on. Let me see if I can send her an email so you can jump back in. While we're waiting, does anybody have any questions for me? I got most of you guys are still here. Everybody's still here except for Eliana. I think her computer might have freaked out on her, so we'll give her a minute to jump back on. In the meantime, since we've got some time, I'll go ahead and share my screen and I'll show you guys some more of the browser capabilities. So give me one sec. All right. One more time for me. Is everybody here? Oh, Eliana's back.
Here I am. Sorry, Tony. I lost you for a minute.
I was about to show the new browser, so I'll give you a second to recover.
Good.
And
Awesome. Thank you.
Show my my system here, right? So this is 4.1 that I'm running, and you can see here web pages, Google Maps, right? Google Analytics. Let me pull in my Gmail. So if I go and sign in for my Gmail, that's my email address. So that's all right. You can't see what I'm typing. That's good.
There it is. Yeah.
So you can see here, jump into Gmail, and now if I jump over to Google Analytics, since I've logged into Gmail itself, I lost you help. Yep, we know you. Yep. We were patient. So you can see I jump into Analytics, and I've got that. I jump into Maps, and I've got that. If I pull in YouTube, then I should be logged in as Network Optix.
You save them with that ratio, Tony, right? So the windows open in the ratio you want them to.
Yeah, you can adjust them to however you'd like. Yeah. So if you wanted to have your Gmail be smaller and to the left or to the top, right, you can adjust this. So, I mean, from my perspective, I actually have used this before as my work environment because it makes it really nice to do work. You've got this kind of like customizable web layout and everything in here, right?
Yeah.
So jumping into YouTube, right, so we can search for Nirovision.
Yeah. You can play the temperature teaser.
You can see the first Nirovision and see how far everything has come.
We also offer you faces for you to add.
Play video, interact with the web just like you would with a normal browser environment. So it's a much more powerful browser environment, and that allows you to do a lot more in terms of interactivity with third-party web-based systems. I know a lot of you guys asked about like active mapping. Well, now you can pull up a Google map, you can create a custom map, you can use the API to send alerts to the map, and then click on that and then send an event back to NX to open up a specific layout. There's really a lot you can do. The Macho Man, oh, there it is. The Macho Man dashboard is one of my favorites.
Oh yeah!
So okay, back to you, Eliana. Now you can share your screen again.
Thank you, Tony. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to beat this. I'll sure try. I should try to make this sound as exciting, and I'm very sorry. I apologize for what just happened.
Technology.
Thank you very much also for the hint, Tony. And what we were discussing before all this mishap, and after you showed us the browsers in NX, is what's new in this plugin. And aside from the installers, which simplify the setting up, and the fact that we automatically create the cameras in Nirovision, so you don't have to do any setup on our platform after you enable the NX integration. You have the widgets that we were seeing before. And the new inclusion in this plugin is, aside from also passing the temperature metadata in the objects, we are also passing, or we have created actually a new custom event that's triggered whenever a temperature reaches an absolute threshold. So you could use this event in the rules engine. We set the temperature in our site for the time being, so you have to tell us what temperature you want this alarm to be triggered on, but you'll soon be able to set that yourself. And you can use the widgets in combination with the custom events for further analysis, whether you do that in the NX environment or outside of it. So the same temperature information that we plug into the facial recognition pipeline is also available in NX for you to consume. So once, what does this look like is, and Murphy's Law prevention, I took the screenshot so you could see it, in the temperature, in the notification panel, faces that are detected using Nirovision now come with metadata for the labels, so you can search in the notifications panel. It comes with the identity name if you have such a thing, or no name if you don't want to use names for identities, which is perfectly fine. And then also the temperature read as well. So if there is an abnormal read, you will see it here. But in the event looks like this, and I triggered it to beforehand, so we would have something to show. So the temperature event will show up in your events notification panel in a sec. And you'll see that because I set it to trigger above 37.5, it's, oh, it stopped, and I want to show you, I'll pause it. You see it here. There it is. Elevated temperature, Hikvision thermal, that's the model that we have in the office. It's from the low tier range of hike, and the recognition event pointing at me. If I had zoomed in, I would be, you would see that the,
don't worry about it.
You would see that the, can you hear me correctly, Tony? I had a little blip. You would see then in that event that the recognition result belongs to myself. So I'll move from the video because it looks like my computer gets upset every time I try to play a YouTube video. So aside from the setup itself, what you need to run Nirovision on, and it's something we were discussing before, is you need a server. That dedicated server needs to be flashed with an Nirovision OS, which is a custom implementation of Linux. And that OS takes over the server and turns it into an appliance. So it sits side by side to the server you're using to run your VMS or any other of your systems. The NVIDIA GPUs are the ones we recommend when you're having multi-camera setups, but you could have a handful of cameras without it. So if you're doing an implementation that's small, you could run it on CPU. We recommend GPU, especially if you're going to add more than a handful of cameras just for performance. And because the server is running detection and recognition on the edge, you get very, very low latency. And the information you require to set up the NX plugin, you get it available using one of our browser tools, which is the partner portal that we give access our partners to for them to control their customer setups and also to proceed to set up hardware on their behalf. And that's it in a nutshell. The pricing model is something we discussed originally, but let's bring it up again. We charge a fee based on the number of cameras that are connected and the number of identities. If you are interested in anything that we've shown so far, and that is whether you have a project in mind or there's a particular solution that you're interested in, or if you want to just brainstorm with us ideas, you have a vertical you want to address, or you hear a pain point from a customer and you're not sure if the system is right or not, we're more than happy to help with that. So ultimately, the message that I wanted this webinar to pass on is that we've been hearing a lot of pain points worldwide, and we're here to help. So if you're unsure of what the implementation should be or what technology is available and what we could do, just reach out. And the best way to do that is message your sales rep and bring me along, and I'll be able to answer your questions.
There was one question from Edwell, which was if you had like a third-party database, like a staff database, like LDAP, Active Directory, that kind of thing, would you be able to integrate that with Nirovision in some ways? Like if you were an HR database.
Yes.
So let's say I have a database where I have new hires coming in.
Yep.
And then I take a picture of them for their badge and everything else, right? And I want to pass that information along to Nirovision. Is there a way to integrate those two together right now?
Yes, there are APIs available that are an endpoints to create identities from a third-party system. So as long as you can provide me with a photograph, because of course I need at least a single image for them, then that's all you need. You can pass it on to Nirovision using the APIs to create identities. Or if you want to build a database of photos and just dump them in the import tool to create, you could do that too. So
there's no preset tools for that right now, right? For
no.
You guys got to remember, Nirovision is a young company, right? Mm-hmm. The integrate to third-party
ecosystem, right?
And everything else that usually comes after 5 to 7 years for new technology companies, because they want to focus on developing their product, and they want to develop new features that are going to add value for the product as a whole. And so the integrations that you're going to see are going to, and especially in 2020, APIs, a REST API, if you're an integrator out there and you're not familiar with REST APIs, I suggest you sign up for a course online and take it, because it will make your life hella easier. You'll figure out how easy it is to do integrations these days, because HTTP REST APIs are so standard in the way that they allow you to exchange information between systems. Yeah. So that's why, our generic event is an HTTP API call that's based off of REST APIs, right?
Yeah.
If you get into the REST API world, you're going to be able to do a lot more custom integrations a lot faster for your customers. And relying on companies like Network Optix or Nirovision to do these integrations is not a great strategy, because usually it's the biggest paying customer that gets to dictate what kind of integrations exist. And if you're like us, that doesn't even work, because we do not play in the native integration field really, other than, like core technologies like on-VIF cameras. LDAP is one that you just kind of got to do at some point, because the Active Directory is huge and a lot of companies use it.
Yeah.
But other than the core technologies that we want to integrate with, I mean, the value really is in developing open extensible, standardized APIs, because that allows you, the integrator, to go out there and create something special for your customer. And that is your value add in this situation, right? I mean, if you've developed an integration for a customer, writing a script, right, that runs on the system, it's very difficult for that customer to move away from you because they don't know how it works, but you do, right? So there's a value there for you as an integrator to learn how to do these basic integrations, because it just raises your value tremendously, right? So that was just my spiel on, you know, take some time to go look at like REST APIs, because it's gonna allow you to really do special stuff and really add a lot of value to the projects that you guys work on. So that is the answer, is basically there's an API, and you don't know how to do it. There's a software developer there's software developers that we Network Optix work with, and I'm sure Nirovision knows some as well, that can be contracted to do a very fast, very simple integration, something like that. So.
Yeah, and that could be anything you say, input, it could be any output, it could be, APIs are flexible enough to accommodate all those use cases. So it should be it should be more freeing than restricted in a way.
Yeah, and if you guys are interested in going into REST APIs, I can do a webinar on REST APIs. They have a very specific form in that they're stateless, right? So you can make a request, you do a put, get, you know, a couple different types of requests that you can make to a REST API, and you're basically exchanging information just like we're doing right now, right? Our API is the English language at the moment. We're talking to each other. She doesn't have direct access to my brain. I don't have direct access to your brain, and you guys don't have direct access to your brains, but we're exchanging information in a standard way that we all understand. And that's what an API does at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
I think we should totally do that webinar, Tony. I mean,
API webinar. All right. So are there any questions? And we can allow you guys to ask questions in audio. If you raise your hand or you ask a question, we can try audio questions today. We are about out of time, but it's 7:00 p.m. in Texas. I don't have anything else to do the rest of the night, so ask away.
I enjoy these breakfast sessions with you, so we can stay as long as you want to.
So are there any questions out there? And if not, that just means we did a really good job.
We did a good job.
Zoom does not like your computer. Do you have like a MacBook Air or something? You have a MacBook Air, don't you?
No, I'm on a MacBook Pro.
Okay, that's good.
No, you'd be surprised. I'm actually very upset at this hardware now.
I think it's because you're running this plus screen sharing plus the application, so it's
and the microphone.
Yeah. No questions. I see no questions. Ryan, no question. Matt Harrison, no question. You've always got questions in sales calls, Matt Harrison. I think he left.
Just we talk a lot over the phone, Tony. That's the.
All right.
Okay. It's okay though. If anyone has the question afterwards, after thinking it through or mulling it over, shoot it my way.
Yeah, one thing I want to promote, and I'm going to take over screen sharing again.
Of course, grab it.
One thing that I do want to promote, everyone. Oh, how do we get the new plugin version? You talk to Nirovision.
That's right. You email me.
Soon, and I think soon there will be, I can't tell you when, but soon there's going to be a way for you to find plugins in cloud.
Yes.
Download them in cloud. So that will be cool.
I'm waiting for that too, so you'll find out together with me.
One thing I wanted to show you guys, I've got way too many browser windows open. Don't pay attention to that. That's new branding. You're not supposed to see that yet.
Ooh.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to show you guys that I'm going to start reiterating is on our support portal. And this is not the right interface. So let me go to my guide. So in the support portal, if you've got general questions about integrations, about the software, about features that you can do, anything, that we have our community here. And we're really promoting this because You can ask any question here and get an answer pretty quickly from our existing support team anywhere in the world at any time zone, because they're on this all the time. So if you have questions about integrations, you can ask them here. If you got questions about developer questions like APIs, you can go to the developer forum and look at them there. If you've got a new feature idea and you want to throw out a new feature idea, I'm telling you guys out there, the best way to get a feature implemented is to add a feature request here and then tell all your friends to go vote it up. Because our product manager and our CTO and co-founder, Sergey, he loves this and he watches this. So the more activity you generate here, the more likely you are to influence our development plans for upcoming releases, right? So if you want to try and sneak a feature in, my suggestion is go to new feature ideas, throw your new feature idea up there, send an email to all your friends and say, go vote this up for me, right? And say how great of an idea it is, right? Because that does matter, right? The level of activity on our support portal in our community, first of all, it's increasing every day. So there's lots of good people that will answer you, even if it's not us, somebody else may know the answer to a question. The other one is we have beta feedback. So if we put out a beta version like we have right now, you can see during the beta testing phase, if you find a problem, find a bug, run into some issue, you can come here and tell us about it. And it's beneficial for us because it helps us address any issues. The other one is if you want to have access to like the iOS app, you see Greg here ask for access to the iOS app. You can ask our support team for a lot of things. And if you put it in this community, they will help you. They love the support community. So it's like one of their favorite things. So be active in the community. I know you guys are on the webinar right now, so you're already active in terms of staying engaged with us, but this is a tool that you should be on top of. So back to you.
Back to you, actually.
All right. I think that's about it, though. So Alan asked, how do we get the new plugin version? Contact Eliana right now is the best way to stay up to date on the latest plugin versions.
Plus, Alan has my number, so I'm sure he's gonna get it.
I've got your number. So that is about it then.
Awesome.
I hope everybody has a good day and stays warm in Australia.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for the time, and thank you to the community and everyone that joined. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and the team. So it's been great. Take care, and I'll see you soon.
Take care. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.